Hey guys, tonight we're traveling to the green, misty, and hauntingly beautiful shores of Ireland in the middle of the 19th century. We're going to a world of stone walls, peat fires, and deep, abiding poverty. A world that was on the cusp of a catastrophe so profound it would change the country forever. Tonight's story is about the Great Famine, but more specifically, it's about the disturbing and inseparable connection between the hunger that racked the land and the diseases that followed like a shadow. Feasting on the weakened and the desperate, this isn't a story of kings or generals. It's the story of ordinary people caught in a perfect storm of biological disaster and political failure. And let's be honest, living in pre-famine rural Ireland would have been tough enough. Imagine a diet that consists almost entirely of one thing: potatoes. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It was a food source so effective it allowed the population to boom, but so dangerously monolithic that its failure would mean the collapse of an entire society. You'd probably be begging for a salad by day 3, a concept which was about as foreign as a steam locomotive. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. It's a quiet and simple way to support the channel. And while you're at it, I'd love to see where and when you're tuning in from. Go ahead and drop your city and local time in the comments. It's always a little fascinating to see our community of history lovers spread across the globe. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your world is a small, one-room stone cottage with a leaky thatched roof and a floor made of packed earth. It is home to you, your parents, and your 5 siblings. And when the weather is particularly foul, it is also home to the family pig. The air inside is always thick with the sweet, acrid smell of burning peat, a scent that clings to your clothes, your hair, and your very skin. This is the perfume of your life. The year is 1845 and you live in the west of Ireland, in a world made almost entirely of potatoes. Your family's entire existence is tied to a single, rented acre of damp, rocky soil. This is a common historical fact of your time. The land you work is owned by a wealthy Anglo-Irish lord, a man who lives in a grand estate in England and has likely never set foot on this patch of earth. You do not rent from him directly. You rent from a middleman, who rents a larger tract from the lord and subdivides it into smaller and smaller plots to maximize his profit. It is a precarious, stacked system, and you are at the very bottom of it. Your life is governed by 2 things, the rent and the potato. To pay the rent, your family grows a small crop of oats and raises that single, precious pig who is often treated better than the children. The pig is your family's most valuable asset. It is not for eating, it is for selling. The money from the oats and the pig goes directly to the middleman, to pay for the right to live on this land. Everything else is the potato. The acre of land you rent is your food supply for the entire year. It is a mathematical and agricultural miracle. No other crop in the world can produce as many calories on such a small, poor piece of land as the potato. It is the reason your family, and millions of others like yours, can survive. It is the fuel that has allowed Ireland's population to explode in the last century. Your diet is a testament to the potato's versatility and your family's poverty. Breakfast is a bowl of leftover boiled potatoes from the night before, mashed with a little hot water. Lunch, eaten in the field, is a few cold. Boiled potatoes carried in your pocket. Dinner, the main meal of the day, is a great, steaming pot of potatoes, boiled in their skins, served with a cup of buttermilk if you are lucky, or just a pinch of salt if you are not. It is a monotonous diet, but it is filling, and it has kept your people alive for generations. The potato you grow is a variety known as the Irish lumper. It is not a particularly handsome or tasty potato. It is large, knobby, and has a watery texture, but it is a hardy, reliable beast. This is an obscure but crucial detail of your world. The lumper thrives in the poor, wet soil of the west of Ireland. It is easy to plant and easy to harvest. It is the perfect crop for a poor tenant farmer. It is also, you will soon discover, uniquely and catastrophically susceptible to the blight that is coming. You are young, strong, and your days are filled with the hard, physical labor of a farmer. You know the feel of a spade in your hands, the ache in your back from turning the soil, the rhythm of planting the seed potatoes in the spring. You know the smell of the peat bog from which you cut your family's fuel, the smell of damp earth and ancient, slow decay. You look around your small village, at the cluster of stone cottages like your own, and you see life teeming everywhere. Families are large. The lanes are full of barefoot children, their faces smudged with dirt, their laughter echoing in the misty air. Your parish priest calls it a sign of God's blessing, this great flourishing of the Irish people. But the landlord's agent, the stern Protestant man who comes to collect the rent, sees it differently. He complains that the land is overburdened, that there are too many mouths to feed, that the people are multiplying too quickly for the land to support them. This is the heart of a great academic debate that is raging in the halls of power in London. A debate started by a scholar named Thomas Malthus. Is this population boom a miracle or a ticking time bomb? Are your people a testament to the life-giving power of the potato? Or have you become a fragile, dependent species that has outstripped its resources, making a great catastrophe not just possible, but inevitable? You do not know about these debates. You only know that your family is large, your plot of land is small, and the potato is all that stands between you and starvation. Your world is small, contained. Your knowledge of the world beyond your own parish comes from the stories of traveling tinkers or the occasional months-old newspaper that the priest reads aloud after Mass. You know of the great Queen Victoria in England. You know of the vast industrial cities being built across the sea. But those places are as remote and as unreal to you as the moon. Your world is this valley, these green hills, these stone walls, and this small, precious plot of potato plants. Life is hard, but it has a deep, predictable, and comforting rhythm. The planting in the spring, the tending in the summer, the harvest in the autumn, the hunger and the hope of the winter. It is a cycle that has continued for as long as anyone can remember. It is a world in a precarious but stable balance. In the summer of 1845, that balance feels more stable than ever. The weather has been perfect. The potato crop is the most magnificent anyone has ever seen. The plants are tall, strong, and a vibrant, healthy green. The leaves are broad and lush. There is no sign of disease, no hint of the rot that sometimes affects a portion of the crop. The harvest begins in late summer. You and your family go into the field with your spades. You turn over the rich, dark earth, and the feeling of the spade unearthing the first clump of potatoes is a moment of pure, profound joy. They are beautiful, clean, firm, large, and plentiful. You gather them in wicker baskets, their earthy smell filling the air. You carry the baskets back to the cottage. Your family will eat well this winter. The rent will be paid. There will be enough seed potatoes left for next year's planting. There is a feeling of deep relief, of security. The world is good. God is in his heaven, and the potatoes are healthy in the earth. You stand at the door of your cottage that evening, looking out over your small field. The air is still and a little cool. A strange, unfamiliar mist is rolling in from the Atlantic, a fog that is thicker and quieter than the usual Irish mist. And on the air, you can smell something you have never smelled before. It is a faint, sweetish, and deeply unpleasant smell. A smell like things that are rotting, decaying while still being alive. You shrug it off. It is probably just a strange sea fog. You go inside your small, smoky cottage. To the warmth of the peat fire and the familiar, comforting smell of potatoes boiling for the evening meal. You do not know it, but you have just smelled the arrival of a foreign invader. An airborne fungus named Phytophthora infestans. You have just smelled the beginning of the end of your world. The comfort of the good harvest is a brief, warm glow against the encroaching chill of autumn. For a few weeks, life in your small cottage is almost prosperous. The pot on the peat fire is always full of potatoes. They're fluffy. Flory inside's a testament to a bountiful year. The future feels secure, contained in the hundreds of potatoes you have carefully stored in your earthen pit. A buried treasure of sustenance that will see your family through the long, dark winter, but the strange, sweetish, rotten smell that you noticed on the wind that one evening does not go away. It lingers at first. It is faint. A ghost of a scent that you only catch when the wind is right. But then it grows stronger, more pervasive. It becomes a permanent feature of the air. A foul. Underlying note beneath the familiar smells of peat smoke and damp earth. It is the smell of a great, slow, and unseen decay. You are out in the field, digging up the last of the potato crop, the ones you will use for the immediate week's meals. You notice that the leaves on the remaining potato plants look wrong. Where they were once a vibrant, healthy green, they are now flecked with small, dark brown spots. You touch one of the leaves. It feels strangely brittle. You mention it to your father. He frowns. His face, a map of worried lines, clouding over. He has been a farmer his entire life. He knows the rhythms and the signs of the land, and this is a sign he has never seen before. Within a week, the change is dramatic and terrifying. The dark spots on the leaves have spread with an unnatural speed. The lush green foliage of the entire field has curled up, withered, and turned a dead, scorched black, as if a great fire has swept through the valley, burning only the potato plants and leaving everything else untouched. The awful stench of decay now rises directly from your own field. It is the smell of your family's future rotting on the stalk. A nervous, fearful energy grips the village. Everyone has seen the same thing in their own small plots of land. The blight, as it comes to be called, has struck everywhere, all at once. But a desperate hope remains. The blight has only affected the leaves, the tops of the plants. Surely the potatoes themselves, the tubers buried safely in the earth, are unharmed. The crop that has already been harvested and stored in the pits must be safe. This hope is what gets your family through the next few days. The stored harvest is your security. It is your life insurance. The day comes when your mother asks you and your father to open the potato pit to bring in a fresh supply for the cottage. The pit is a simple but effective storage method. A hole dug in the dry earth, filled with your potatoes, and covered with layers of turf and soil to keep it dry and protected from the frost. You and your father take your spades and walk to the small rise where your pit is located. As you begin to dig away the top layer of turf, the smell hits you. It is the same foul, sweet stench from the fields. But it is concentrated here, trapped in the earth. It rises from the pit like a foul breath, and you feel the cold knot of dread tighten in your stomach. You dig faster, pulling away the soil and the turf. You reach the layer of potatoes. They look fine. The ones on top are firm. Their skin's dusty but intact. A wave of relief washes over you. The blight only took the plants still in the ground. The stored harvest is safe. Your father reaches into the pit and pulls out one of the large, handsome potatoes from the top layer. He takes out his small knife and he cuts it in half. And you see the horror? The inside of the potato is not the firm, creamy white flesh you expect. It is a disgusting, watery, grayish-brown mush. A dark, spreading rot has consumed it from the inside out. It is no longer a food, it is a lump of putrescence. Frantically, you begin to dig through the pit. You pull out potato after potato. Some look fine on the outside, but when you cut them, they are rotten within. Others have already begun to decay from the outside, their skins erupting in dark. slimy patches. They collapse in your hands into a foul-smelling, liquid sludge. The blight was not just on the leaves. It was a poison that seeped down into the earth, into the very heart of the potatoes themselves. And it did not stop when they were harvested. It has been silently, invisibly, working its way through your entire winter food supply, turning your buried treasure into a pit of inedible, stinking rot. This same scene of horrified discovery is being repeated in every cottage, in every village, across the entire country. The great, magnificent harvest of 1845, the best in living memory, has been transformed, in the space of a few short weeks, into a single, massive, rotting pile of garbage. A common historical fact of this event is its astonishing speed. A crop that looked perfectly healthy in August was a putrid mess by October. Your family is plunged into a state of terrified disbelief. How is this possible? What is the cause in a world without a scientific understanding of microbiology, without the knowledge of fungal spores and airborne pathogens? The blight is a complete and terrifying mystery. And so, in the absence of a rational explanation, you and your neighbors turn to the ones you have. You hear the theories whispered in the village. Some say it is a punishment from God, a divine wrath visited upon a sinful people. Your parish priest gives a thunderous sermon on the subject. Others blame the new steam trains that have begun to cross the countryside miles away, saying their foul smoke has poisoned the air and the soil. Still others believe it is a strange, new kind of fog, a miasma that has risen from the earth itself to poison the crop. These folk theories, these desperate attempts to find a cause, to find some agent to blame, are a testament to your people's confusion and terror. Even the great, learned men in Dublin and London are baffled. You hear from the landlord's agent, who reads the city newspapers, that the Royal Agricultural Society is holding great debates on the cause of the blight. The scientists can see the fungus on the blighted leaves under their microscopes. They call it Botrytis infestans, but they are trapped in a great academic debate. Is this tiny fungus the cause of the disease? Or is it merely a symptom? Is it a parasite that is killing the potato? Or is it simply a mold that is feeding on a potato that is already decaying from some other unknown cause? Some mysterious wet putrefaction in the soil itself. This failure of the scientific establishment to correctly identify the cause of the disease that the fungus was indeed the pathogen would paralyze any hope of an effective response for a crucial amount of time. Your own response is not scientific. It is desperate. You and your family spend the next week in a frantic, heartbreaking salvage operation. You dig up the entire potato pit, sorting through thousands of potatoes by hand. You're searching for any that have not yet been touched by the rot. You work from sunrise to sunset, your hands covered in the slimy, stinking mush of the decayed potatoes. The smell clings to you, a constant reminder of the disaster. You try the folk remedies. You're told that if you sprinkle the good potatoes with quicklime, it will stop the rot. It does not. You are told that if you dry them by the fire, the heat will kill the blight, but the potatoes simply shrivel and turn hard. Nothing works. The decay is relentless. Decay is at the end of the week. The full scale of the catastrophe is laid bare. From the great harvest that was supposed to feed your family for an entire year, you are left with a single, small pile of potatoes that seem, for now, to be unaffected. It is a pathetic mound, barely enough to last a month, and beside it is a much, much larger mound, a great, stinking pile of black, putrid sludge, the remains of your family's hope, their security, their future. That evening, you all sit in your small, dark cottage. The peat fire burns, but it offers little warmth against the new, cold fear that has entered your home. You eat your meager meal of a few boiled potatoes, but the taste of them is different now. Every bite is a reminder of how few you have left. You look at the faces of your parents, your brothers, your sisters, and you see a look you have never seen before. It is not the familiar, weary look of poverty. It is not the worried look of a bad harvest. It is the sharp, hollow-eyed, and deeply primal fear of starvation. You look at your own small pile of potatoes, and you look out at the dark, empty fields, and you know, with the cold, hard certainty of a mathematical proof that it will not be enough. The long, hungry winter is coming. The small pile of healthy potatoes, which once seemed like a pathetic remnant, is now treated like a hoard of royal treasure. Each day, your mother carefully counts out the ration for the family's single meal. Each potato is boiled with a reverence usually reserved for a sacrament. And each day, the pile shrinks. The winter of 1845 arrives with a damp, bone-chilling cold that the weak peat fire in your cottage cannot keep at bay. Hunger becomes a constant. Unwelcome guest in your home. It is a dull, persistent ache in your belly. A lightheadedness that makes you dizzy when you stand up too quickly. A constant, draining coldness in your hands and feet. Your world, already small, shrinks even further. Reduced to the simple, brutal calculus of calories consumed versus calories expended, you see the same creeping hunger on the faces of your neighbors. The village grows quieter, the usual sounds of life replaced by a kind of weary, energy-saving lethargy. The social fabric begins to fray. Families become more withdrawn, hoarding their meager resources, their eyes filled with suspicion. The sharing and community support that once defined village life is a luxury that no one can now afford. The last of your own potatoes are gone by Christmas. For a few weeks, your family survives on the pig, the one that was meant to pay the rent. Your father makes the hard decision to slaughter it. The brief period of having meat to eat feels like a king's feast. But every bite is laced with the bitter knowledge that you are eating your own rent, that you are consuming the very thing that guarantees your place on this land by January. True, desperate starvation has set in, and it is then that the first rumors of the government's response begin to trickle into your isolated valley. You hear that the Queen's men in London, under the Prime Minister, Sir Robert Peel, are aware of the failure of the potato crop. You hear that they have a plan. The plan comes in two parts. A strange and complicated solution that seems to have been designed by men who have never set foot in a place like your village. The first part is a secret, a grand gesture of foresight, unbeknownst to the public. Peel's government has purchased 100,000 pounds worth of Indian corn maize from America to be shipped to Ireland to feed the starving. There is a brief, flickering moment of hope in the village when this news arrives. Food is coming, but then comes the second part of the plan, the part that turns hope into a new kind of misery. This is where you first encounter the rigid, unyielding ideology that will govern your life and death for the next several years, the doctrine of laissez-faire. The great men in London, you learn, believe that giving food away for free is a grave moral error. They believe it will create a nation of dependence, that it will disrupt the natural workings of the free market, and that it will be an unsupportable burden on the treasury. So, the food will not be given away. It must be earned. The government establishes a vast program of public works. In order to receive the money to buy the government's corn, all able-bodied men must work. And so, you and your father, your bodies already weakened by months of hunger, are forced to join the work gangs. The work itself is a form of madness. It is pointless, back-breaking labor for its own sake. You are put to work building roads, but they are not roads that connect your village to a market town. They are roads that lead nowhere, that start in a bog and end in a stony field. They are famine roads, built by starving men to nowhere, a monument to a government's terror of providing direct charity. You work 10 hours a day. In the freezing winter rain and sleet, you are digging ditches, breaking stones, hauling earth. The work is designed for strong, well-fed men, and you are a population of half-starved skeletons. Men collapse on the work sites from sheer exhaustion and hunger. The pay is a pittance, a few pence for a full day's labor. barely enough to buy a single family's daily ration of the promised Indian corn. It is a system designed by distant bureaucrats, a system that burns more calories in the labor than it provides in the food it allows you to buy. It is a system that is, in its own way, as diseased as the potatoes themselves after a week of this grueling, pointless work. Your father has earned enough money to buy your family's first ration of the government's miracle food. You go to the newly established food depot in the nearby town, and you are given a sack of the American corn. It is not a flour. It is a bag of hard, bright yellow, dried kernels. And this is where the government's well-intentioned plan collapses into a new kind of cruelty. Your people, your entire civilization, has been built on the potato. Your culinary technology consists of a single large pot for boiling. You have no idea what to do with this strange, foreign grain. There are no mills in your village fine enough to grind the hard kernels into a proper flour. You try to grind it by hand, between two stones. But the result is a coarse, gritty meal, like sand. Your mother tries to cook it. She boils the gritty meal in water, as she would with oatmeal. The result is a thin, watery, and almost completely indigestible gruel. You eat your first bowl of it, and you are so hungry you barely notice the taste. But a few hours later, the agony begins. The coarse, undercooked cornmeal is like swallowing gravel. It causes terrible stomach cramps, pain, and a violent, debilitating dysentery. This new affliction quickly sweeps through the village. The relief food, the food you were forced to build a useless road to earn the money to buy, is itself a kind of poison. It sickens you. It strips away what little nourishment is left in your body. You give it a new name. You call it Peel's brimstone. It is a cruel, ironic joke. The food sent to save you feels like a punishment sent from hell. The first winter of the famine is a long, slow education in this new world of bureaucratic cruelty and state-sponsored starvation. You learn that the men in power fear a disruption to the market more than they fear your death. You learn that their solutions, designed in distant offices, are often as deadly as the problem they are meant to solve. You survive. Your family survives. You do it by a combination of the grim determination to work on the roads, the painful endurance of Peel's brimstone, and the charity of your slightly better-off neighbors. But as the winter finally gives way to a weak, watery spring, you are all changed. You are thinner, weaker. The children no longer have the energy to play, a kind of permanent. Weary silence has settled over your cottage and your village, and with the spring comes a new terror. You must pay the rent for your acre of blighted land. The pig is long gone. The oat crop was barely enough to feed you for a few weeks after the potatoes ran out. You have nothing. You watch as the landlord's agent, accompanied by constables, goes from house to house. You see your neighbors, people you have known your whole life, being evicted. Their few meager possessions are thrown into the lane. The roof of their cottage is torn down by the constable's crowbars. A process called tumbling to ensure they cannot return. They are now homeless, landless, destitute. They are reduced to begging on the roads. A fate that is, for many, a death sentence. Your own family is spared. For now, your parish priest, a good man, has managed to collect enough money from a relief committee to pay the rent for the most desperate families in his parish, including yours. But it is a temporary reprieve. You know that if the potato crop fails again this year, nothing will be able to save you as spring turns to summer. The entire nation holds its breath. Every farmer, every family, plants their few remaining seed potatoes with a desperate, prayerful hope. They watch the new plants grow with a frantic anxiety. The plants look healthy. The leaves are green. Perhaps the blight was a one-time event, a freak of nature. Perhaps this year, the harvest will be good. Perhaps the nightmare is over. But in August, the familiar, awful stench begins to drift on the wind again. The strange fog rolls in. The leaves begin to blacken. The blight has returned, and this time it is far, far worse. It has destroyed the entire crop, completely and utterly across the whole of Ireland, and at the same time. Devastating news arrives from London. The government of Robert Peel has fallen. A new government, led by Lord John Russell, has taken power. And they are true, zealous believers in the doctrine of laissez-faire. They believe that Peel's relief efforts, as inadequate as they were a grave mistake. They believe that the market, and the market alone, must be allowed to solve the problem of the famine. They announce they are shutting down the public works projects. They are closing the food depots. The small, terrible, and barely functioning lifeline that has kept you and your family alive through the first winter is about to be cut. You stand in your field of blackened, stinking potato plants. You look at the gaunt, terrified faces of your family, and you understand. The first winter of hunger was not the famine. It was just a prelude. The real apocalypse is about to begin. The summer of 1846 is a season of cruel and empty beauty. The sun shines, the wildflowers bloom, and the potato fields of Ireland are once again covered in lush, green foliage. A desperate, fragile hope flickers across the land. Perhaps last year's blight was a freak event, a one-time disaster. Perhaps this year, the harvest will be good, but by August, the familiar, foul, and sweetish stench of decay begins to drift on the wind again. The blight has returned, and this time it is a ravenous, all-consuming monster. It sweeps across the entire country with breathtaking speed. The healthy green fields turn black and putrid almost overnight. The second harvest is not just a failure, it is a complete and utter annihilation. There will be no potatoes this year, none at all. And this time, there's no safety net, however flawed. The new government in London, under the leadership of Lord John Russell, has ended Peel's program of public works and food depots. They are zealous believers in the economic doctrine of laissez-faire. They believe that the government must not interfere with the free market, even in the face of mass starvation. The market, they declare, will provide. Food will flow into Ireland from other sources, drawn by the high prices that scarcity will create. But the Irish people have no money to pay high prices. They have no money at all. The market does not provide for those who cannot pay. And so, with no potatoes and no government relief, the country begins to slide into the abyss, the only option left for the truly destitute. The final, desperate port of call in the storm of starvation is the workhouse. The workhouse is a new and dreaded institution in Ireland. Established by the Irish Poor Law of 1838, these great, grim stone buildings have been built in every district, or union, across the country. They are not hospitals. They are not charities. They are prisons for the poor and the people of your village, who have a fierce pride and a deep love for their own small patch of land, would rather die in their cottages than suffer the shame and degradation of entering its gates. But as the winter of 1846 approaches, and true, desperate starvation takes hold, that resolve begins to break. Your own family is on the brink. Your father is too weak from hunger to find work, and there is no work to be found anyway. Your younger siblings are becoming thin and listless. The fire in the hearth is small, and the pot above it is empty. But you have one thing that most of your neighbors do not. You are literate, thanks to the lessons from your parish priest. You can read, you can write, and you can do sums, and this single. Precious skill is about to change your life. You hear that the Board of Guardians for your local poor law union is desperate for clerks. The workhouse, which was designed to hold a few hundred people, is being overwhelmed by a tidal wave of the starving. And they need men to process the admissions, to keep the ledgers, to save your family. You make a choice. You will join the system. You will become a part of the great, grinding, bureaucratic machine of famine relief. You walk the 10 miles to the town where the workhouse is located, and you present yourself to the guardians. They are relieved to find a young man with a clear hand and a quick mind. You are hired for a wage of a few shillings a week and a daily ration of food. You are now a clerk in the local workhouse. You have moved from being one of the starving to being an employee of the institution designed to contain them. Your first day at the workhouse is an education in institutional misery. The building itself is a monument to despair. It is a large, grim, fortress-like structure of gray stone, designed to be as imposing and as unwelcoming as possible. Its architecture is a physical manifestation of its guiding philosophy. That philosophy, you learn, is the principle of less eligibility. This is the cornerstone of the Poor Law, a common historical fact that governed the lives of the poor throughout the British Isles. The rule was simple and brutal. The conditions for any person receiving aid inside the workhouse must be worse, or less eligible, than the conditions of the poorest. Most miserable independent laborer outside the workhouse. It was a system intentionally designed as a deterrent, to ensure that only those on the absolute brink of death would be desperate enough to seek its shelter. It was not designed to comfort, but to repel. Your job is to be the gatekeeper to this house of last resort. You sit at a tall wooden desk in a cold, bare office near the entrance. You have a great new leather-bound ledger, a fresh ink pot, and a sharpened quill, and you process the damned. They come in a grate, shuffling, skeletal wave. They are the evicted, the landless, the starving from all the surrounding parishes. They crowd the gate, their faces gaunt, their eyes hollow with a despair that is beyond tears. They are dressed in rags, their bodies thin and wasted by hunger. You must interview them, one by one. You must record their details in your neat, clerical hand, name, age, parish of origin, condition upon arrival. The questions are a cold, bureaucratic intrusion into their profound suffering, if they are deemed destitute enough to be admitted. The cruelest part of the system begins. The family unit, the one source of comfort and strength left to these people, is systematically destroyed. This is the most obscure and brutal detail of the workhouse system. Upon entry, the family is broken up by gender and by age. You witness the scene again and again, until your heart grows numb to it. The husband is separated from his wife. He is sent to the men's ward. She is sent to the women's ward. Their children are taken from them. The boys are sent to the boys' dormitory. The girls to the girls. They are allowed to see each other only for a few hours on Sunday. During church services, a family who enters the workhouse together ceases to be a family. They become individual paupers. Units in a filing system. They are stripped of their own ragged clothes, which are taken away to be fumigated and stored. They are given the workhouse uniform. It is a coarse, ill-fitting, shapeless garment of rough, undyed wool. It is designed to be durable, and to strip the wearer of any last vestige of personal identity. The uniform comes in one size miserable. You sit at your desk, the scratch of your quill the only sound in your office, and you grapple with the nature of the institution you now serve. Is this a system of relief? A great, if flawed, act of state charity designed to prevent mass death? Or is it a system of social control, a great engine of cruelty designed to punish the poor for their own poverty? The debate will rage among historians and politicians for generations. You do not have the luxury of debate. You are living the reality. You are the man who records the names of the people being fed into the machine. The bureaucracy is as relentless as the hunger. There is a form for everything. A form for admission. A form for the weekly food rations. A form for disciplinary infractions. You suspect there is a special form for death by starvation, and another for death by boredom while waiting for the correct form to be processed. As the weeks go on, the workhouse fills far beyond its capacity. It was designed for 600 paupers. Soon, There are over 1,000 crowded within its walls. The conditions become even more squalid. The dormitories are packed. The food, a thin, watery gruel of oatmeal and buttermilk called stirabout, is barely enough to keep the inmates alive. The place is a powder keg of misery, waiting for a spark. The spark, when it comes, is not a riot or a rebellion. It is something far worse. It is silent, and it is invisible. It begins with the children. A child in the girls' dormitory develops a high fever and a strange, blotchy rash on her skin. Then another, and another. Then it appears in the men's ward. Then the women's. You, in your clerk's office, see it first in the numbers. You begin to see a new entry in the daily medical officer's report. Not just malnutrition or debility. You see the word fever. At first, there are just a few cases. Then a dozen. Then 50. The great, unspoken terror has arrived. The famine has brought the people together, concentrating them, weakening them, and it has created the perfect breeding ground for the second great horseman of this apocalypse disease. The hunger has loaded the gun, and now, the fever is about to pull the trigger. One evening, you're working late, trying to make sense of the chaotic, overflowing admission ledgers. The door to your office opens. A man and a woman, holding a small child, stand there, their figures silhouetted by the lamplight from the hall. They are new arrivals, their faces etched with the familiar shame and despair. You dip your quill in the ink and you open your great book to a fresh page. Name you ask, your voice tired and toneless. The man tells you his name, and a jolt of ice goes through your veins, but you know this man. You know his family. He is from your own village. He is a man you grew up with, a man whose children you played with in the fields. You look up from your ledger, and you see him properly for the first time. You see his face, no longer the face of an anonymous pauper, but the face of your neighbor. You see the profound, soul-crushing shame in his eyes as he is forced to declare himself a beggar to a boy from his own village. You write his name down. Your hand is shaking so badly you can barely form the letters. You are no longer just a clerk, a detached functionary of a faceless system. You are now the official recorder of your own community's utter and final destruction. You are the man who is writing the names of his own neighbors into the book of the damned. And you know, with a terrible, chilling certainty, that this is only the beginning. The workhouse, which you once saw as the absolute bottom of human existence, a place of last resort, reveals itself to have a deeper, more terrifying cellar. The hunger that drove your neighbors through its gates was a slow, grinding misery, but the pestilence that now erupts within its crowded. Filthy walls is a swift and merciless fire, the connection between famine and disease. A disturbing truth that will fascinate future historians is no longer an abstract concept to you. It is your daily, horrifying reality. You are witnessing a great, terrible human experiment. You have taken a vast population of people, weakened their immune systems through months of starvation, and then crammed them together in a single, poorly ventilated building with no sanitation. The result is predictable. The workhouse becomes a perfect, horrifyingly efficient factory for the production of disease. It starts with a new word in the medical officer's daily report. Fever. At first, it is just a handful of cases in the children's dormitory. But within a week, the word is everywhere. The small workhouse infirmary, designed to hold a dozen patients with common ailments, is overwhelmed in a matter of days. Then the fever spills out into the general wards. You, at your clerk's desk, become the official chronicler of this new apocalypse. Your job shifts. You are still admitting the starving, but now you are also keeping the death ledgers. And to do so, you must learn the vocabulary of this new enemy, the overworked and overwhelmed workhouse physician. A man named Dr. Connolly becomes your reluctant tutor. He teaches you to distinguish between the different famine fevers that are now raging through the wards. First, there is typhus, which the terrified inmates call black fever, Dr. Connolly explains, in a weary, resigned voice. That it begins with a splitting headache, a high fever, and a strange, dark, mottled rash that covers the body. He tells you it is spread by the louse, the tiny parasite that thrives in the filthy, unwashed clothes and bodies of the workhouse inmates, in a place where people are packed together on straw pallets, where they wear the same uniform for weeks on end. The louse is king, and it is a very effective tax collector for the Grim Reaper. Then there is relapsing fever, which the inmates call yellow fever, because it often causes the skin and eyes of its victims to turn a ghastly, jaundiced yellow. This, too, is spread by the louse. Its particular cruelty, Dr. Connolly explains, is its cyclical nature. A person will suffer a terrible fever for several days. A fever so high it induces delirium. Then the fever will suddenly break. The family, if they are still alive, will rejoice. They will think their loved one has been spared, but a week later, the fever returns with a vengeance, and it will break, and it will return again, each cycle leaving the victim weaker and more wasted, until their body simply gives out. And finally, there is dysentery, the bloody flux. This is a disease not of a parasite, but of the water and the food itself. It is a direct consequence of the breakdown of sanitation in the overcrowded workhouse. It is a sickness of the bowels, a violent, dehydrating affliction that leaves its victims little more than hollowed-out shells. Your ledger begins to fill with these new words. You write them over and over, next to the names of the people you admitted just a few weeks before. Mary O'Connor, age 32, cause of death typhus fever. Sean Walsh, age 8, cause of death dysentery. You're neat. Clerical script becomes a testament to a biological slaughter. You are now at the very heart of a great historical and medical debate, the classification of death. You admit a family. Their official reason for entry listed as destitution due to famine. The father is a skeleton, his body wasted by months of starvation. He dies a week later. The immediate cause of his death, Dr. Connolly tells you, is typhus, which he caught in the crowded men's ward. And so, in your ledger, you must write fever, but you know the truth is more complicated. The hunger loaded the gun. The fever merely pulled the trigger. Would this man have died if his body had not been so weakened by starvation? Of course not. This blurring of the lines, this disturbing symbiosis between famine and disease, makes your records a kind of official lie. Future historians will struggle with this, trying to calculate how many of the 1 million who died in the Great Famine died of actual starvation, and how many died of the diseases that followed. You, the clerk on the ground, know that it is a meaningless distinction. They are two heads of the same monster. You witness other, stranger manifestations of starvation. You see people suffering from a condition the doctor calls famine dropsy, or edema. Their bodies, which had been skeletal, begin to swell in a grotesque and frightening way. Their legs, their arms, their faces become puffy and bloated with fluid. To the ignorant, it looks like a sign of returning health, as if they are putting on weight. Their families rejoice, but you learn from the doctor that it is the opposite. It is a sign of advanced protein malnutrition, a sign that the body's internal systems are failing completely. It is a harbinger of imminent death. The workhouse, this great stone symbol of government order, descends into chaos. The staff cannot keep up. The infirmary is overflowing. The sick are now lying on pallets in the corridors, in the dining halls, in the chapel. The very air in the building becomes thick and foul, a miasma of sickness and unwashed bodies and death. The healthy starving and the sick starving are now all mixed together, And the distinction between the two groups has ceased to exist. The entire workhouse has become a fever den. Your own office is no longer a sanctuary. It is a thoroughfare of misery. You work behind a rag soaked in vinegar, a trick you learned from stories of other plagues. But you know it is a useless gesture. The fear of catching the fever yourself is a constant. Cold presence. You look at your own hands, at the quill you hold, and you wonder if the virus, the louse, the germ, is on it, waiting. The Board of Guardians, the local committee of wealthy landowners and merchants who are supposed to oversee the workhouse, are in a state of panic. You sit in on their meetings, taking the minutes, and you listen to their debates. They are not concerned with the suffering of the inmates. They are concerned with the cost of food, the cost of medicine, and you note with a black, cynical humor, the rising cost of burial shrouds. The well-being of the paupers is a problem. The balancing of the budget is a crisis. Finally, after a meeting that consists mostly of shouting and finger-pointing, the board makes a decision. Dr. Connolly comes to your office late one night to tell you. His face, in the flickering lamplight, is a mask of utter defeat. They have approved an emergency measure, he says, his voice heavy with exhaustion. We cannot contain the fever within these walls. The entire building is contaminated. He looks at you, his eyes hollow. So we are going to move it outside. You do not understand. We are going to build fever sheds, he explains. On the grounds behind the workhouse, simple wooden sheds. We will move all the inmates with a confirmed fever, all the typhus and the relapsing fever cases, into the sheds, to isolate them from the merely starving. You look out the window of your small office. It is dark, but you can see the muddy patch of ground behind the main building. You can see a cart, laden with raw timber and sacks of nails, that has just arrived. And you understand. The workhouse, the place that was the symbol of the bottom of society, the last resort, is no longer the end of the line. There is a new, even lower circle of hell to be created. The fever sheds, a place where the sick will be sent. Not to be cured, but simply to be removed, to die out of sight, to keep their contagion away from the slightly less doomed. You look at the neat, orderly columns in your ledger, and you know you will soon have to add a new column. Not just admitted and deceased, but transferred to fever shed, a final, bureaucratic stamp for the damned. The construction of the fever sheds begins immediately. It is a work of grim and hasty necessity. There is no thought given to comfort or permanence. You watch from your office window as gangs of laborers, themselves gaunt and hungry, erect the structures on the muddy, desolate field behind the main workhouse building. They are long, low, and crude, made of cheap, unseasoned pine. They are little more than barns. Their walls thin, their roofs covered in tarred canvas, their floors nothing but the cold, damp earth itself, strewn with a thin layer of straw. They are built not to shelter, but to contain. They are built to be tombs. As the clerk of this miserable institution, your duties now expand. You are given a new ledger, a separate book for the fever sheds. It is your job to manage the traffic between the world of the starving and the world of the dying. When Dr. Connolly, his face a permanent mask of exhausted despair, identifies a new case of typhus or relapsing fever in the overcrowded wards, it is you who must make the official designation. You find the name in your great workhouse ledger, you draw a neat line through their assigned location in Ward B or Ward C, and in the margin, you write the terrible. Final destination, fever shed number 1. The words are a simple administrative act, but they feel like a death sentence. You are no longer just an admitting clerk. You have been promoted to a travel agent for the afterlife, and your only destination is hell. You witness the first transfers. It is a procession of the damned. The inmates who are still strong enough to walk stumble from the main building out into the cold. Wet air? Their pathetic workhouse uniforms offering little protection. They know where they are going. They have seen the sheds being built. They have heard the rumors. And in their eyes, you see a new kind of fear. A fear that is beyond the fear of hunger. It is the fear of being officially declared hopeless. Of being cast out. Of being sent to the place where everyone dies. Those who are too weak to walk are carried on rough wooden stretchers by sullen, terrified orderlies. They are living skeletons. Their bodies burning with fever. Their minds lost in delirium. They are carried out of the relative stone and mortar permanence of the workhouse and into the flimsy, temporary, and disposable world of the sheds. The conditions inside are a thing of nightmares. Curiosity and a sense of horrified duty compel you to look inside one of them. The air is thick, hot, and foul with the stench of sickness, of unwashed bodies, of human waste. There is no sanitation. There are no individual beds. There are only long, continuous platforms of rough wood, covered in a thin, dirty layer of straw, and on this straw lie the bodies of the sick and the dying, packed together so tightly there is no room to walk between them. Men, women, and children are all mixed together in a single, tangled mass of human misery, a single, overworked nurse, a woman whose face is a mask of heroic, suicidal compassion, moves among them, offering a sip of water here, a comforting word there, but there is no medicine. There is no treatment. This is not a hospital. This is a warehouse for the dying. The mortality rate in the fever sheds approaches 100%. The Board of Guardians, in their infinite wisdom, have solved the problem of overcrowding in the infirmary by creating a dedicated state-of-the-art facility for overcrowding and dying. This is the great, terrible debate of the famine, playing out in these wretched sheds. Was this a genuine, if crude and desperate, public health measure, an attempt at quarantine, to isolate the contagious and protect the healthy population of the workhouse? Or was it something else? Was it simply a more organized and bureaucratic way of hiding the most horrific consequences of the famine? A way to move the unsightly, moaning, and inconveniently dying population out of the main building, where they might be seen by a visiting guardian or a newspaper reporter? You suspect the latter. The sheds are not a quarantine. They are a concealment. And with the sheds comes the need for a new and more efficient system of burial. The sheer number of bodies emerging from these sheds each day makes the idea of individual graves, even in the pauper's field, a logistical impossibility. And so, the workhouse trench is dug. It is a long, deep, open gash in the earth. In a muddy field behind the fever sheds, it is kept permanently open. Each morning, a cart makes its rounds from shed to shed. The bodies of those who died in the night are collected. They are not wrapped in shrouds. The cost is too great. They are not placed in coffins. The wood is needed for the sheds. They are simply loaded onto the cart. They're naked. Emaciated limbs stiff with rigor mortis. The cart is then taken to the trench, and the bodies are unceremoniously tipped in, landing in a jumble of pale, wasted flesh. A thin layer of dirt and lime is shoveled over them, and the trench is left open, waiting for the next day's harvest. It is an act of mass-produced, anonymous burial for a mass-produced, anonymous death. The horror of your work becomes intensely personal. You're no longer just processing strangers. You are processing your own people. One afternoon, you are at your desk, and your neighbor from your home village, the man you admitted a few weeks ago, is brought before you. He is not a new admission. He is a transfer. Dr. Connolly has diagnosed his wife with typhus. You must look this man. A man whose children you grew up with. In the eye, you must take your quill, find his wife's name in your ledger, and you must be the one to draw a line through Women's Ward number 2 and write the words, "Fever Shed." Number 2, the man does not weep. He does not plead. He simply looks at you with a silent, bottomless despair that is worse than any cry. And then he is led away. You feel a piece of your own soul die. You are no longer just a witness to the system. You are its instrument. You are the one who signs the papers, who condemns the people you know to the sheds of the doomed. The days and weeks blur into a single, unending nightmare of paperwork and death. The only break in the monotony is the dark, cynical humor that you and the other workhouse staff, the doctor and the nurses, share. It is a gallows humor, the only kind that can survive in a place like this. You joke that the workhouse has a new, efficient 3-stage system admission, fever shed, and trench. You joke that you are running a travel agency, not a workhouse. You joke, because to not joke would be to go completely and utterly mad. The climax of your personal horror arrives on a cold, wet February evening. The workhouse is a cacophony of coughing. The fever is everywhere now, a wildfire that has burned through every ward. Dr. Connolly asks you to accompany him on his rounds through the men's ward. He needs you to carry the ledger to record the new cases for transfer to the sheds. You walk through the long, dark, stinking room, holding a lantern high. The sight is apocalyptic. Men are lying 2 or 3 to a bed, their bodies shivering violently. The air is thick with the stench of sickness. You stop at a bed near the far end of the ward. A man is lying on his side, his face turned to the wall. He is trembling, and his breathing is shallow and rapid. This one has the fever, Dr. Connolly says. His voice a weary sigh. Turn him over. You help the doctor turn the man onto his back. You hold the lantern closer to his face, and your heart stops. It is your father. He was admitted with the rest of your family weeks ago. A decision that has haunted you every single day. You have seen him from a distance, but you have avoided him, ashamed of your own relative health, of your role as a functionary in his misery. But now, you are forced to confront him. His eyes are glassy with fever. His skin is burning to the touch, and as you pull back the rough blanket, you see the dark, telltale, bruised rash of typhus spreading across his chest. Dr. Connolly places a hand on your shoulder. He does not need to say anything. He is a kind man, and his eyes are full of a terrible pity. He knows what this means. He knows what your duty now requires. You stumble back to your cold, quiet office. You are in a state of shock. Your mind a numb, white blank. You open your great ledger. You find the entry for your own family. You find your father's name. You dip your quill into the ink pot. The ink is as black as the grave. Your hand is trembling so violently that the script you are so proud of becomes a jagged, spidery scrawl. You draw a line through the words men's ward number 4, and beside his name, the name of the man who raised you, who taught you to farm, who brought you into this world. You write his final destination, final, fever shed number 3. The quill hovers over the page, a single drop of black ink falling like a tear onto the paper. You have just officially sentenced your own father to death. The act of writing your own father's name into the death ledger of the fever sheds is an act that breaks you. The quill falls from your numb fingers. The carefully constructed wall of professional detachment you had built around your soul crumbles into dust. You are no longer a clerk. You are no longer a functionary. You are just a son who has condemned his own father to die in a wooden shed filled with filth and misery. You walk out of your small office, away from your ledgers and your ink pots. You do not ask for leave. You do not tender your resignation. You simply walk away. You walk out of the great, grim gates of the workhouse. A place you once entered to save your family, and you do not look back. Your career as a bureaucrat in the service of death is over. Your father dies 2 days later. You are not there to witness it. You are told by a sympathetic nurse that his end was quick, a small mercy in a world that has forgotten the meaning of the word. He is buried in the grate. Anonymous trench behind the sheds. Another nameless victim of the fever that hunger had invited in. A new and singular purpose now forms in your heart. It is a purpose forged in grief and rage. You will not let the rest of your family perish in this doomed land. The workhouse has failed. The government has failed. The land itself has failed. There is no hope here, but there is a new hope, a new myth, a new religion that is spreading like a fever through the starving countryside. And that new religion is called America. You begin to hear the stories in the village, in the town, whispered in the bread lines and among the skeletal gangs of men who now have no work to go to. The stories come in letters, precious, crumpled pieces of paper that have made the impossible journey across the great ocean. They are from the sons and daughters, the brothers and sisters, who emigrated years before, during times of mere poverty, not of apocalyptic famine. These letters are read aloud in secret, huddled gatherings. Their words a powerful and intoxicating sermon of hope. They speak of a land with no landlords, no middlemen, no tithes, a land where a man can own his own soil, a land of endless fertile fields, and, most importantly, a land of food. They speak of streets paved with gold, a phrase that you, in your desperate, literal hunger, imagine as a real and wondrous possibility. For most, America is a dream, as distant and as unattainable as the kingdom of heaven. The journey requires money, and money is a commodity that has vanished from your world. But then, a miracle happens. A letter arrives for your mother. It is from her brother, your uncle, a man who left for Boston 20 years ago and has been a ghost of a memory ever since. And inside the letter is a small piece of paper, a bank draft. It is a remittance. He has sent money home. It is not a fortune. It is only a few pounds. But in a world where the currency is starvation, it is the wealth of a king. It is a lifeline. It is a chance. You do the grim arithmetic. The money your uncle has sent, combined with the few shillings you managed to save from your own miserable wages as a workhouse clerk, is enough. It is enough to buy passage on a ship to North America for your mother and for your two youngest siblings. It is not enough for you or for your older brother. A terrible, necessary choice must be made. Your family gathers in your cold, dark cottage, and you make the decision. Your mother and the youngest will go. You and your brother will stay behind. You will find work, somehow, somewhere, and you will save. And one day, you will follow them. It is a desperate gamble, a severing of your family, perhaps forever. But the alternative is to stay together and starve together. The choice is not really a choice at all, and so begins your final journey in Ireland. You and your family, the 5 of you who are left, begin the long walk to the coast, to the port of Cork, where the emigrant ships sail from. It is a journey through a land that is dying. You walk past fields of blackened, rotting potatoes. You walk through villages that are eerily silent, their cottages empty, their roofs already beginning to fall in. The landscape is dotted with the skeletal figures of the starving. Walking the roads, going nowhere, their faces stamped with a vacant, hopeless despair. The port of Cork is a circle of hell you had not imagined. The quayside is a vast, teeming, chaotic mass of human misery. Thousands of people, all as desperate as you, are crowded onto the docks, all clamoring for passage on any ship that will take them. The air is thick with the smell of the sea, but also with the smell of unwashed bodies, of sickness, of fear. You see ticket agents, men with hard faces and greedy eyes, selling passage on ships that are barely seaworthy, preying on the ignorance and desperation of the emigrants. You see families being cheated out of their last few shillings, their dreams of America turning to dust on this crowded, filthy quay. And you see the ships. They are not the fine, fast passenger clippers you have seen in drawings. They are cargo ships, timber ships from Canada, cotton ships from America, their holds hastily and cheaply converted to carry their new human cargo They are old, they are slow, they are often leaky and unsafe, they are floating slums. And the people of Ireland, with their characteristic black humor, have already given them a name. They call them coffin ships. The shipping agent advertises a trip to the Promised Land, looking at the leaking. Overcrowded vessel your mother is about to board. You suspect the only thing it promises is a high probability of typhus and a burial at sea. You stand with your family amidst the chaos. The moment of separation has arrived. Your mother, her face a mask of grief, clutches you to her. You will follow, she says, her voice a fierce, desperate plea. Promise me you will follow. We will follow, you lie. Knowing the chances are slim to none, you say goodbye to your younger siblings. Their faces pale and confused, and then you watch them walk up the crowded gangplank, joining the great, miserable tide of humanity that is pouring into the dark. Cramped hold of the ship, you stand on the quay with your older brother, and you watch as the ship, overloaded and riding low in the water, is pulled away from the dock. The people on board are packed so tightly on the deck that they are just a single, undifferentiated mass of pale, upturned faces. A great collective wail of grief rises from the crowd on the shore and from the people on the ship. The sound of 1,000 families being torn apart. As you watch the ship move out into the harbor, you reflect on the nature of this great exodus. Are these people truly choosing to leave, or are they being forced out, driven from their land by a famine that the government has refused to fight? You know that the landlords are happy to see them go. It clears their estates of a destitute and burdensome population. You know that many in the government in London see emigration as the only logical solution to the Irish problem. This is the great, bitter debate that will haunt your nation's history. Was the Great Famine emigration a voluntary search for a better life? Or was it a form of forced exile? A policy of removal? A great cleansing of the land, watching the coffin ship, with its human cargo of your own mother and siblings? You know what you believe. You and your brother stand on the quay for hours, watching until the ship is just a small, dark speck on the vast, gray expanse of the Atlantic Ocean. You have saved them. You have sent them away from the certainty of death by starvation in Ireland, and you have sent them towards the terrifying uncertainty of a long voyage in a new, unknown world. You do not know if you will ever see them again. You are left behind, in a land of ghosts, with nothing but the clothes on your back and a fragile, desperate promise to keep the hunger, the fever, the workhouse, the evictions. You thought you had seen the worst of the famine, but you realize now that this profound and bottomless sense of loss and separation is the cruelest part of all. You and your brother stand on the quay at Cork, two insignificant pieces of human driftwood left behind by the great tide of emigration. The forest of mass slowly thins as ship after ship of the desperate and the hopeful sets sail for the New World. The wailing of the families torn apart subsides, replaced by the usual cries of the gulls and the lonely sound of the wind. Your new life begins. You are landless, homeless, and penniless. The few shillings you had were given to your mother for some small comfort on her journey. You are now at the absolute bottom of the social ladder. You are vagrants, beggars in a land where there is no one left with anything to give. You leave the city of Cork, a place teeming with a misery that is too vast to comprehend, and you take to the road. You walk without a destination, joining the great, silent army of the starving who now wander the countryside. They are known as the famine walkers, skeletal figures who trudge from village to village, looking for a scrap of food, a place of shelter, a rumor of relief, the hope that had sustained you, the letter from America. The passage for your family is now gone. All that is left is the raw, daily, and all-consuming reality of your own empty stomach. You and your brother survive on whatever you can find. You scavenge for turnips left rotting in the fields. You gather seaweed and boil it into a slimy, briny jelly. You learn to catch frogs in the ditches. You learn the hard lesson that a human body can endure an astonishing amount of privation before it finally gives up. It is during this time on the road that you begin to hear of a new kind of relief. It is not from the government. Their workhouses are notorious death traps that you know you must avoid at all costs. This new relief is from private charities. From religious societies funded by wealthy patrons in England, they are setting up soup kitchens in the most devastated parts of the country. The word soup itself becomes a kind of magic, a holy grail, the idea of a hot. Nourishing liquid seems like a dream of unimaginable luxury, driven by a hunger that has now passed beyond simple pain and into a state of lightheaded. Dizzying weakness. You and your brother make your way towards a town where one of these kitchens has been established. You find it in a small market town that has been hollowed out by the famine. The soup kitchen is not a chaotic, desperate place like the workhouse gate. It is orderly, clean, and unnervingly quiet. It is run by a man and a woman, English missionaries. Their faces well-fed and filled with a kind of stern, righteous piety. A great iron cauldron of soup steams over a fire in the yard. It smells the simple, honest smell of boiled vegetables and perhaps, you imagine, a hint of meat so overwhelmingly delicious that it makes you weak with longing. A line of your fellow starving Irish are queued up, but it is a short line, and you soon understand why as you approach. The minister, a tall man with a severe face and a black coat, holds up a hand. The Lord's food is for those who are willing to hear the Lord's word, he says. His English accent sharp and foreign. He gestures to a large tent set up next to the soup cauldron. To receive a bowl of soup, you must first enter the tent. You must sit on a rough wooden bench, and you must listen to a sermon. This is your first encounter with the practice of souperism. This is the great, bitter choice being offered to the starving Catholics of Ireland. You can have food for your body, but the price is a potential poison for your soul. You must listen to a Protestant preacher tell you that your own faith, the faith of your ancestors, the faith that has sustained your people for 1,000 years, is a superstitious, idolatrous, and damnable error. You must listen to him tell you that this great famine is a punishment from a just God, a divine judgment upon the Irish for their refusal to accept the true gospel. You are faced with an impossible choice. Your entire identity is wrapped up in your Catholic faith. It is the culture of your village, the language of your prayers, the source of your community's strength. To enter that tent is to commit an act of profound betrayal. The people who do so are reviled. They are called supers or jumpers, men who have jumped from their own faith for the sake of a meal. They are ostracized, treated as traitors by their own starving neighbors. But you are so hungry. The smell of the soup is a physical torment. It is the smell of life, of survival. Your stomach is a hollow, aching void, and it does not care about theology. It only cares about food. You and your brother hesitate. You watch as a few others in the line, their faces tight with a mixture of shame and desperate need, lower their heads and enter the sermon tent. You see your own parish priest, who has been trying to organize what little relief he can, watching from across the square, his face a mask of sorrow and powerless rage. You think about your ancestors. You think about your mother on that ship, clutching her rosary beads, and then you think about the gnawing, acid pain in your own belly. Can a man's soul truly be damned for trying to stay alive? This was the great, cruel debate at the heart of the missionary efforts. Were these English evangelicals cynical predators, using a national tragedy as a tool for proselytizing, or were they driven by a genuine, if profoundly arrogant and paternalistic, belief that they were saving both body and soul? Did they truly believe that the path to Ireland's salvation, both material and spiritual, lay in abandoning the Pope and embracing the Protestant faith standing outside that tent? Weak with hunger, you do not have an answer. You only know that the price of this soup is your own identity. The soup itself, you learn, is a marvel of modern science. It is based on the recipes of a famous French chef in London, Alexis Soyer, who has designed it for maximum nutrition at minimum cost. It is a scientifically formulated famine relief soup. It is also, by all accounts, famously bland and tasteless. It is the perfect symbol of the relief effort itself, a gesture that is both life-saving and soul-crushing. You and your brother stand there for a long time. Your hunger at war with your pride, but the body is a powerful and persuasive tyrant. In the end, it wins, with your heads bowed, avoiding the contemptuous gaze of the other Irish who are watching. You and your brother enter the tent. You sit on the hard bench. The air inside is close, filled with the smell of unwashed bodies and self-righteous piety. The minister begins his sermon. He speaks of the darkness of Rome, of the worship of saints and statues, of the superstitions that have kept your people in poverty and ignorance. He speaks of the grace of a God you do not know, a God who seems to demand a surrender of your very history in exchange for his mercy. You do not listen to the words. You close your mind to them. You focus on the smell of the soup drifting in from outside. You endure the hour of your own damnation. It is the longest hour of your life. Finally, the sermon is over. You are allowed to leave the tent. You are handed a tin cup and a ladle. You go to the great cauldron. The woman, the minister's wife, fills your cup with the steaming, grayish liquid. There are a few small, soft lumps of turnip and carrot floating in it. You take your cup and you retreat to a quiet corner of the square. You lift it to your lips. It is hot, and it is thin, and it has very little flavor. But it is the most wonderful thing you have ever tasted. It is the taste of life. It is the taste of survival. It is the taste of shame. You have taken the soup. You are a souper. You and your brother drink every last drop. The hot liquid in your empty stomach is a comforting, painful miracle. You are no longer starving, but as you look around, you see the way the other villagers are looking at you. You see the contempt in their eyes. You have saved your bodies, but you have sold your souls for a bowl of watery soup. You have escaped the workhouse. You have escaped immediate starvation, but you have now entered a new kind of exile. You are an outcast among your own people, a man marked by his choice to live. You have traded the misery of hunger for the misery of shame, and you do not yet know which is worse. The taste of the missionary soup is the taste of survival, but it is also the taste of shame. You and your brother have made a bargain with your hunger, and the price is your place within your own community. You are now supers, men who have taken the soup. You are marked, set apart, in the cruel, stratified society of the starving. You have become a new kind of untouchable. You do not stay in the town. You cannot bear the silent, contemptuous stares of the other Irish who chose to starve with their faith intact. You take to the road again, living a half-life, moving from one Protestant soup kitchen to the next, enduring the daily sermons on your own damnation as the price for the thin, life-sustaining gruel that keeps you and your brother alive. The years pass in this miserable, nomadic haze. The famine, the great, all-consuming monster, finally begins to recede. The blight still returns some years, but it is less virulent. The government in London, having presided over the deaths of more than 1 million people, finally implements more effective, if belated, relief. The workhouse is empty of the living and the dead. The soup kitchens close down, and slowly, a new, wounded, and terribly altered Ireland begins to emerge from the wreckage. It is 1852. 7 years have passed since you saw the first strange. Rotten leaves in your father's potato field. You and your brother. 2 men now, no longer boys. Hardened and haunted by what you have seen and done to survive. Make a decision. You will go home. You will walk back to your village, to the small patch of land that was once your entire world, to see what, if anything, is left. The journey home is a pilgrimage through a land of ghosts. The Ireland you walk through is not the Ireland you remember. The roads are quiet. The endless, Shuffling processions of the starving are gone, but the silence they have left behind is more haunting than their cries ever were. The landscape itself has been transformed. This is the most shocking change of all. You remember a countryside that was a patchwork of millions of tiny, cultivated plots, each one supporting a family, a land teeming with people. Now, you walk for miles and see almost no one. What you do see are the ruins. They are everywhere, standing on any small hill. You can see them dotting the landscape in every direction. The small, stone cottages of the people you knew. They are roofless now, their thatched roofs having long since rotted away or been stripped for fuel. Their empty doorways and windows stare out like the hollow eye sockets of a skull. The green land of Ireland is healing itself, the ivy and the grass growing over the stones. But the ruins of the cottages remain, like a vast, open-air graveyard. You are walking through a land of empty houses. You see the great, consolidated fields. Where there were once 100 small family plots, there is now a single, vast, green pasture, enclosed by a new stone wall, filled with hundreds of grazing sheep or cattle. The landlords and the strong farmers who survived have taken advantage of the great dying. They have cleared the land of the surplus population, of the small tenant farmers, and have converted the land to the more profitable business of grazing. The landscape is greener, more orderly, more efficient than you have ever seen it. And it is empty. You have seen more sheep in the last day of walking than you have seen people. The sheep, it seems, have won the war for the land. Finally, you arrive at your own valley, your own village of Oakhaven. It is a ghost town. Of the 30 or so cottages that once made up your community, only 5 are still standing and occupied. The rest are roofless, silent ruins. The small church is still there, but its door is closed, its bell silent. The parish priest, you learn, died of the fever years ago and was never replaced. You and your brother walked to the small plot of land where your own cottage once stood. It is gone. The walls have crumbled. The hearthstone is overgrown with weeds. The roof has completely disappeared. There is nothing left but a faint, rectangular outline on the ground, a ghostly footprint of your own childhood. You stand in the place where your family once lived, and you are overwhelmed by a sense of absolute and final loss. You look out at the field where you once grew potatoes. The land is not empty. You can still see the faint, parallel ridges in the grass. They are the Feo chain, the lazy beds, the spade-dug ridges where your family planted its potatoes for generations. It is an obscure, but enduring testament. The land itself still bears the faint scars of the agricultural system that sustained you, and the people who worked it. You find a few of the survivors, old neighbors who look at you with the wary, haunted eyes of fellow ghosts. They tell you the stories of the intervening years, who died in the workhouse, who perished in the fever sheds, who took the coffin ship to America. Every family has a story of death and departure. You encounter the landlord's agent, a younger man than the one you remember, but with the same hard, unsentimental eyes. He is overseeing a great flock of sheep that now grazes over what was once the land of a dozen families. He speaks to you not as a former tenant, but as a curiosity. He talks of the great improvements that have been made, of how the land is more productive now, free from its burden of overpopulation. He speaks of the famine as if it were a harsh but necessary act of nature, a great natural culling that has allowed for the modernization of Irish agriculture. You listen to him, and a cold, quiet rage builds in your heart, a natural disaster. You remember the government public works projects that were designed to fail. You remember Peel's brimstone. You remember the workhouses designed as prisons. You remember the relief ships full of food being exported from Irish ports while your people starved. And you are confronted with the great, bitter, and unanswerable question that will define your nation's memory of this catastrophe. Was the Great Famine a tragic natural disaster? exacerbated by a clumsy and incompetent government blinded by a rigid economic ideology? Or was it something worse? Was it a form of passive, administrative genocide? A deliberate policy of a powerful government to solve the Irish problem by allowing a significant portion of its population to be wiped from the land? This question, you know, will be debated with fury and sorrow by your people for centuries to come. You, standing in the ruins of your own home, looking at the fat sheep grazing on your neighbors' graves, know which side of the debate you fall on. You and your brother spend one last night in your ruined village, sleeping in the sheltered corner of the empty church. The next morning, you stand on the hill overlooking the valley, the same hill where you stood as a boy, in a world that was made of potatoes. That world is gone. The people are gone. The life you knew is gone. There is nothing left for you here. You think of your mother and your siblings. You have not heard from them since they left. You do not know if their ship even made it to America. But the hope of them, the idea of them, is the only thing you have left. You and your brother turn your backs on the green, silent, an empty land of your birth, and you begin the long walk back to the coast, back to the port city, back to the sea. You will find a way. You will work. You will save. You will steal if you must. But you will get on a ship. Your life in Ireland is over. The famine has taken your home, your family, your past. You will not let it take your future. The sea journey to America is its own special kind of hell. A condensed, floating version of the workhouse fever shed. You and your brother are packed into the dark, airless, and filthy hold of the coffin ship with hundreds of other desperate souls. The ship is a breeding ground for disease, and the typhus you thought you had left behind in Ireland comes with you. You watch as people sicken and die in the darkness, their bodies unceremoniously wrapped in a piece of sailcloth and slid over the side into the gray, unforgiving waters of the Atlantic. You survive. Your brother survives. You are lucky when you finally see the shores of the New World. You are weak, sick, and have nothing but the rags on your back, but you are alive. But you are. Many years pass. The story of your life, which had been a story of Irish poverty and famine, now becomes a story of American struggle and survival. You and your brother find your mother and your siblings in a crowded, teeming tenement in the city of Boston. The reunion is a thing of tears and disbelief, a miracle you had barely dared to hope for. You work. You work harder than you have ever worked in your life. You are part of the great, anonymous army of Irish immigrants who are building this new country. You dig canals in the freezing mud. You lay tracks for the great railways that are pushing west. You work in the stockyards, in the factories. It is brutal, back-breaking labor. You face prejudice and hatred. You see the signs in the windows of workshops no Irish need apply. But after what you have survived, a rude sign is a minor inconvenience. A hard day's work for a day's wages is a luxury, and a full belly is a miracle. You are an old man now. You are sitting on the front stoop of a small, clean wooden house in a quiet neighborhood. It is your house. You own it. The idea is still so strange, so profound, that it sometimes makes you dizzy. You are a man who owns the ground beneath his own feet. You are surrounded by your family, your American family, your own children, and their children. They are healthy. They are strong. They are well fed. They have American accents. They have never known a day of real hunger in their lives. They are your victory. They are the reason you endured. They know you are from the old country. They know you came over during the Great Famine, but they cannot possibly comprehend what that means. For them, it is a story, a piece of family folklore. They ask you to tell them about it. Your grandson, a bright, curious boy with an American face, asks you the question that you have spent a lifetime trying to answer for yourself. "Grandpa," he says, "what was it that killed so many people? Was it the potato rot?" You look at his innocent, well-fed face, and you decide to tell him the whole truth. The disturbing connection that lies at the heart of your memory. "No," you say, your voice a low, raspy whisper. The blight was just the beginning. The blight only killed the potato, and it was a terrible thing. But it was not the thing that killed the people. You tell him about that first winter of hunger, about the government in London that feared breaking the laws of the market more than it feared the starvation of 1 million of its own subjects. You tell him about the useless roads that led to nowhere, and the Peel's brimstone that tore up the bellies of the starving. "So it was the hunger that killed them," your grandson asks. "And the English. The hunger loaded the gun," you say. The phrase coming to you with a sudden, sharp clarity. And the politics of the English certainly pointed it at our heads. But the hunger was not the thing that pulled the trigger. No. The great killer. The true, silent, and merciless conqueror of Ireland was something else. And then you tell him about the workhouse. You tell him about the crowded, filthy wards. You tell him about the fever that erupted there. You tell him about the lice, the carriers of the black fever and the yellow fever. You tell him about the bloody flux, the dysentery that came from the foul water. You tell him about the fever sheds, the places where the sick were sent to die. You explain the terrible, simple science of it. A body weakened by months of starvation has no strength left to fight. The immune system, the body's own army, has been starved into submission. So, when the fevers came, they swept through the population like fire through a dry field. The people had no defenses. The hunger had opened the gates of the fortress, and the armies of disease marched right in. This is the great, central debate of the famine, a question that historians and politicians will argue about forever. What was the cause of the Great Famine's mortality? Was it the fungus that destroyed the crop? Was it the political and economic policies of the British government that withheld adequate relief? Or was it the infectious diseases typhus, relapsing fever, dysentery that were the actual, certified cause of death for the vast majority of the victims? You, who lived it, know the truth. You know that the question itself is flawed. You cannot separate them. They were not individual assassins. They were partners in a great and terrible crime. The blight, the politics, the hunger, the fever, they were a single, four-headed monster. They were the four horsemen of your own personal apocalypse. You look at your American grandson. You see his clean clothes, his strong limbs, his eyes that have never looked upon true horror, and you feel a profound sense of gratitude. The chain has been broken. The curse of the potato, the cycle of poverty and dependence has ended. Here in this new land, here in this, you look down at your own hands, the gnarled, arthritic hands of an old man. They are the hands that once dug for rotten potatoes in the cold Irish soil. They are the hands that held a quill and wrote your own father's name into the death ledger of a fever shed. They are the hands that gripped the railing of a coffin ship as it pitched in the icy Atlantic. And they are the hands that have held grandchildren, that have built a new life, that have known the simple, profound pleasure of holding a loaf of bread that you have earned and can eat without fear. You have survived. You are a famine skeleton, a man whose body was permanently marked by the malnutrition of his youth. But you are here. The ghost of the hunger never truly leaves you. It is a quiet, permanent guest at your table. It is in the way you can never bear to see food wasted. It is in the deep, abiding satisfaction you feel at the end of a simple meal. It is in the stories you tell your grandchildren, a desperate attempt to make them understand the precious, fragile miracle of a full belly, and you have finally understood the whole. Terrible story. The blight was an act of nature, but the famine that followed was an act of man, and the great, sweeping death that followed the famine. That was an act of biology, a consequence of the disturbing, unbreakable, and eternal connection between a starving body and the diseases that wait to feast upon it. The hunger loaded the gun. The politics aimed it. But it was the fever that pulled the trigger. This is the last and most important lesson of your long and miserable education. The old man's story fades, leaving only the quiet sounds of a peaceful evening in a new world. The sharp, painful memories of the famine sheds and the coffin ships dissolve into the soft, warm air of the present. The ghost of hunger is at rest. The long journey is over. Let the weight of his history lift from you now. His story is told. His duty is done. And now, your own day is ending, and a quiet, well-earned peace is waiting for you. Feel the world around you grow still. The sounds of the day, the worries of your own life, begin to recede, replaced by a gentle, comforting silence. Your breathing is the only rhythm now. A slow, deep, and easy tide that washes away all tension, all thought, with each breath. You feel yourself sinking deeper into the softness of your bed, into a state of profound and simple relaxation. The darkness behind your eyelids is a safe and quiet haven. It is a place without hunger, without fear. It is a place of absolute and perfect rest. Allow yourself to drift into this darkness, to be held by it, to be comforted by it. There is nothing you need to do, no stories you need to hear. There is only this moment, this stillness, this gentle, easy slide into a deep and dreamless sleep. Let go. Rest now. Your own long journey is over. For tonight,